Do you find yourself challenged on figuring out how to be engaged on the job? Have you ever been responsible for training someone and you decided they might not be trainable? I'll bet if you're a leader or someone who's heavily involved in employee development or morale or HR, you're going to be in for a treat today because we're going to talk about employee engagement, some of the hang-ups that can happen there or with training. I'm Honey Shelton, and this is Training Matters.
Training Matters is brought to you by the Training Institute, dedicated to setting the standard for individuals responsible for training effectiveness in banks and credit unions across the country.
Our guest for this month's episode has a lot of tips and ideas on these topics I just braced you with. Welcome to the show, Stacey. Please take a few minutes, introduce yourself, and let us all know what you do and a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Honey. So my name is Stacey Barnier, and I'm the Director of Human Resources at California State University in San Bernardino. And I oversee the day-to-day operations of the department, including recruitment, benefits, labor and employee relations, retirement, and anything that falls in between there, along with our student employment efforts. And I also serve on the board of directors for the Inland Empire Society for Human Resources Management. And in my role with the board, I serve as the sponsorship chair, which is a fundraising role. So I secure sponsors to support our monthly meetings and also our annual conference. Along with that board role, I also serve as the college relations chair, which is a great fit considering my role at Cal State San Bernardino, which I will also refer to as CSUSB. So we have a student SHRM chapter here on campus, and they're connected to the Inland Empire chapter. And I serve as the liaison between the two and keep our students connected with the professionals in the region so that they can hopefully gain mentorship and opportunities to get employed in the field as soon as they graduate.
Well, how diverse and interesting that is. I can tell you have a passion and a lot of devotion to your profession in terms of being a volunteer and a professional. I know that you have a background in training people and you have this impressive resume around HR. So tell us a little bit about a circumstance where you've been responsible for training, and were you ever challenged by people that perhaps didn't get it? What did you do about it? Tell us a little bit about your role as a trainer.
Sure. So prior to my professional career, I started out as a restaurant server and a bartender, and I was asked to become a corporate trainer for the Elephant Bar restaurant and go on a campaign with them where they would be opening restaurants across the country in areas where people had never heard of the restaurant. And the Elephant Bar is kind of a funky name, especially when you go to places like Overland Park, Kansas, and St. Louis, Missouri, where people have just never even heard of this funky California concept. So it was really important that we not only trained the new hires on the food that we were going to serve and the drinks that we were going to serve, but we needed to really instill the culture of the restaurant into these people who had never ever walked into one of our restaurants in California. And so, you walk into this place and you see a giant elephant and jungle-themed kind of restaurant and ladies wearing leopard print shirts serving things like a jungle colada and trying to get the servers and bartenders to understand how important it was to take the guests to, the destination we were trying to create. So it's sometimes hard when you have to talk in abstract and get people to understand it just by showing them a picture, because at that point in time we weren't really showing a lot of videos, and you didn't have a lot of things on YouTube and the different visual and audio media options that we have now. So we did have challenges. I definitely experienced challenges where people just did not understand what we were trying to do, and they didn't understand the customer service focus that the restaurant had. And if you couldn't get them on board, you had to find a way to either make them understand what you were trying to do, or you also had to help them find the door, which can be a challenge sometimes.
Well, no doubt a lot of our listeners will really relate to that. I liked how you spoke about getting them to get the picture, even though you didn't have the audio and visual tools that are so available today for all of us that train. So I like that. I like how you also spoke about the culture aspect of that training, that you wanted the people you were training to recognize they were a brand ambassador of the Elephant Bar and what they were supposed to expect. So whether we're talking retail, a bank, or even a university, generally speaking, there's a brand that we're trying to uphold to and convey to others to help support that. And I can really relate to the challenges of having people get it in their mind's eye if they can't see the experience yet. Tell us a little bit about your job today, about how you engage your staff and the people that you're responsible for. Maybe beyond that, I'm not sure. But tell us about what you've learned or some really good secrets about employee engagement.
Sure. So in my current role, we are very much behind the scenes. We are not faculty. We're not in the classroom teaching students, but we support the individuals who make that happen. And we keep the campus going in that we hire facilities folks to make sure that the grounds are beautiful and make sure that the restrooms always have toilet paper and make sure that the dormitories have lighting and that the AC is working. We support the individuals that make that happen, whether that be getting them their jobs or getting them their benefits or helping them to take a leave of absence, whatever that may be. So it's hard sometimes to get employees to understand how important their role is when they don't see a connection to the mission and vision of the organization. So it's really important that, in my role, I find ways to insert that into our day-to-day lives. We spend the majority of our time at work with the people that we work with every day. I don't see my family as much as I see my work family. And that's really important to keep that in mind as you're trying to engage employees and help them to understand how their work is meaningful and how it's going to be valuable down the line. We look at ourselves as a learning institution. So one of the things that I like to do as the director of HR is, of course, develop my employees. So whenever I send an employee to a training or a conference or something where they're learning something new, I'm a public employer, so I don't have a whole lot of money to send people to these massive trainings and conferences and things like that. So when I do have the opportunity to do that, I want to make sure that we take advantage of the opportunity that's been created for the staff. So we actually ask our staff when they go to a training to prepare a lessons learned or key takeaways presentation that they will share in our next monthly all-staff meeting so that everybody who didn't get to go, they still have an opportunity to learn from their colleagues. And not only is that giving the other staff the opportunity to learn something new, the person who went to the conference is reinforcing what they learned by turning it around and teaching others. On top of that, they're also able to be more comfortable with their presentation skills and presenting in a larger group. So that gives them another tool to add to their toolkit. it tells them that we value them and we think they're important, and so much so that we want them to teach others. It may be a small group, but that can turn into something bigger down the line. I really think that's a good way to get the most bang for your buck. Another way that we try to engage our staff is finding out what it is that they want to know. I said that I don't have a lot of money, but maybe I've got staff in my department who are very interested in learning more about how our financial aid process works so that they can better understand the needs of our students and our employees. So we may actually bring the financial aid staff in and have them do a short presentation to help our staff understand what financial aid is like here at CSUSB and what those employees go through to get their jobs done every day. So it's just finding different ways that you can get your staff involved and understand the aspects of whatever the business is that you're in. We're in the business of education, so we've got to understand the ins and outs, especially in an HR department where we may have to recruit for that. We may have to, do an investigation and understand what some of those work days look like.
I really like how you spoke about when you send someone to training and what your expectation is. I've encouraged that before myself, and I think that there is so much value. The best way to learn anything is to teach it. I think that's a brilliant piece of advice, even if it's a webinar or a live event. Some of our clients have even done, everybody reads the same book, but everyone has a different week to guide a discussion about a chapter. And I like that. I appreciate how you're letting people know that you have a high expectation of their learning and that they'll have plenty of opportunities. The other thing you talked about that I thought was so significant is asking people, what do you want to know, so you can be the conduit or facilitator of broadening their professional knowledge. I'm curious about, a couple of other things. Tell us about SHRM and how you've benefited from that affiliation and how other people who don't know about it or aren't affiliated with it could benefit.
So SHRM is the Society for Human Resources Management. It really is a global organization of HR professionals who seek to further the profession, whether that be trainings that are put on. There are annual conferences on general HR topics. There are more focused conferences on things like diversity and inclusion, HR technology, different things like that. And then there are also local and state chapters where you may have the opportunity to get involved as well. On top of that, SHRM is also a certifying body that issues certifications after a lengthy testing process where you can actually get a professional designation that speaks to you as an HR professional and what you bring to the workplace. I'm currently in the process of signing up for a certification exam and program so that I can commit to my employer that I'm the best HR professional that I can be, and here's all the reasons why. So on top of the networking that you'll get in SHRM, you will also get tools for success. SHRM has multiple toolkits and things that individuals may need in their day-to-day roles, especially those who might be, an HR department of one. They may not have somebody they can call and ask questions of, whereas a large corporation or organization may have counterparts in other counties or states that they can call and ask for help. So it's very, very, very important for individuals to have those resources. You need a job description, you can log into SHRM's website and look at their tools, and they'll have a boilerplate there for you. It may not be exactly what you want, but it's a good starting point so that you're not starting from scratch. There's also research information available. There's draft policies that you can look at to help develop your new plan of action. There's also the ability to go through philanthropic campaigns, and they develop scholarships for students, and they connect to the younger generation who's going to school and wanting to be HR professionals and keeping the profession alive. So a lot of the universities and colleges are aligning their curriculum with the SHRM body of knowledge and SHRM competencies that they've identified that go along with their certification program, because that is what industry is saying they need in their HR professionals. They want somebody who fits those criteria and moves the organization forward. They're not looking for a paper pusher anymore. They're looking for strategic partners. And so that's how SHRM will help anybody who's not currently a member or hasn't ever heard of SHRM. It's also a good way to find a job. You're able to network with people. They have these programs where you maybe look somebody who's in transition and looking for work. Our local chapter, every month that we have a meeting, we take time to identify our SHRM members who may be in transition and looking for ways to find an HR job. We'll do a show of hands. Who's looking to hire somebody right now? And they have an opportunity to go network with those people and connect with them in ways that the other candidates may not have had. So they get to hear about opportunities and hear about the organization and learn different things that may help them be successful going forward. We also have emerging young professional groups, which is a mentoring and networking opportunity for people who are early on in their careers. So it's just a great way to keep going and show your passion for the field of human resources and also to connect and give back.
Well, Stacey, that's an impressive pitch for SHRM, and I really appreciate how you elaborated on how need-fulfilling it is and how beneficial it can be. And I really want to compliment your comment. The employer today is looking to HR as a strategic partner, someone who can advise, be a part of planning for the future, keeping things on point in the present day. Before we wrap up, I'm going to put you in the hot seat just a tiny bit and ask you, what would you say are the two biggest HR concerns or topics or areas of emphasis you would see in 2018?
Oh, that's a good one. Two biggest areas of concern and emphasis. The first that I see is succession planning. We have so many people who are on their way out to their retired life, which is wonderful and so exciting for them. But we've had organizations where we've had the same individual doing the same job for 20, 30, sometimes even 40 years. And when somebody with 30 or 40 years of experience walks out the door, there is a lot of institutional knowledge that walks out the door with them. I can't tell you how many times I've had to pick up the phone and call somebody and ask a question because it's not written down anywhere, but they just know that in 1987, this particular situation occurred, and that's why we do this one task the way that we do. Nobody ever wrote it down, though, so we don't have that information. And it's really critical for employers to be able to nail that piece of information down before those individuals go out the door. And you can't do an exit interview on that individual and get all of those pieces of information. You have to plan for that, and you have to get individuals in the right seats and start planning early. People will tell you their countdown. I know people who say that on December 31st, 2020, I am out the door, and you better make sure that you've got everything you need from me before I go, because I'm not picking up the phone when you call. I'm going to be in my motorhome, and I'm going to be traveling the country, and you guys are going to be the last thing I'm thinking about, which is great, because they've given us a timetable, and they've told us, that they're willing to put in the time and energy now to share the wealth of knowledge that they have. And so you have to take that as a gift and put people in place. Put the money aside to have a shadow program, to have, cross-training opportunities where you can put people in the hot seat to be a sponge and get that information and put it on paper, so that you've got a desk manual or you've got a business process guide to get as much of that knowledge on paper as possible, so the next person can sit in that seat and do their job without having to pick up the phone and call that individual who might be in Topeka, Kansas at that point, and figuring out how to do things. That's the first bit of information. The second bit of information that I think that HR people are really having to take a look at is what's going on in the world today. We are looking at sexual harassment like we have never looked at it before. Every day you watch the news and there is another case, there's another Hollywood type, there's another politician who's being accused of these horrible and horrendous acts of harassment and sexual violence that is unacceptable. And it starts at the top of an organization. You have to have support. You have to have people who are willing to make the tough decisions when somebody is accused of doing these horrible things. It also doesn't mean that those individuals are guilty. So it's very important that we take a stand and we do our due diligence. But at the same time, you have to have strong policies in place, and you have to train people, and you have to make sure that they understand what is considered harassment and what is not. That is a critical piece of information that a lot of people are missing when I've done harassment investigations. They didn't understand that their conduct was not appropriate in the workplace. And that's hard for people because they spend so much time at work and they become friendly and they start dating relationships and they go out for drinks after work because they become friends. And it's really important that people know where the lines are because they've become so blurred. And then you've got all of these things that are happening in the media, and we see it so much more now that people are more comfortable coming out. This is only the beginning. That's the scary part to me, is that this is only the beginning. So we have to get ahead of this as a profession. And I think that 2018, we're going to see a lot more legislation come down that is going to try to change the way that harassment is viewed. And it's also going to put a lot more compliance on HR. And if we don't have a plan before all of that comes down, it's going to be a scramble. So I think that's really important to start looking at your policies, looking at your investigation procedures. What are you going to do if you get 20 complaints tomorrow? Because it could happen. Those are my two biggest points of 2008 that I think we need to be looking at as HR professionals.
That is awesome. I thought you would probably mention sexual harassment because it is a headline, and I'd like to, stay in touch with you, Stacey, and invite you back to maybe elaborate on these two critical areas. You know what you're about, you know what your interests are, and I think you have the right seat on the right bus, Stacey. You are obviously very interested in what you do and being very professional about it. I so appreciate you being on the show today, and we'd love to have you back. What do you think about that?
I would love to come back.
Okay. It's fun to meet up with a professional who has such a big picture and yet you're able to quickly drill down to the details. So I've had a lot of fun with this interview. I know that our audience is very appreciative of your point of view. So I will be in touch with you. Thank you again for being our guest today.
All right. Thank you so much, honey.
You've been listening to Training Matters with Honey Shelton.